Welcome, Genealogy Adventures family. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Danya Williams. How you guys doing today?
I hope you guys are having an amazing Sunday, and as always, thank you for spending the next hour with us.
Definitely. It's so pretty. It's actually pretty. It's nice in DC today. It's in the area. It's a good little temperature, not too hot, not too cold. It's pretty cool.
Not so in Charleston. There is definitely a storm brewing. It's getting darker by the minute out there.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into this. Okay,
Mhm.
so today we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden hands that built early America. Family, before we start, I need y'all to look at your hands. I want y'all to take a second look and just really look at your hands and understand that they come from somebody who built, carved, stitched, shaped this country with skill, faith, and pure determination.
Yeah, because these hands they carried more than just weight and things. They carried knowledge. When you really think about it, they carried wisdom. Hands like these they built homes. Monticello didn't build itself. Mount Vernon didn't build itself. Slave people built those and everything inside of them. They forged iron and they turned raw materials into actual works of beauty.
Yes, yes. And black history, it just isn't a struggle. It's a craftsmanship. It's an artistry. It's a genius. It's a genius. I want to underline that because it's a genius. Blacksmiths working through the night, the seamstress telling stories through her stitches, the barber who turned his chair into a community pulpit. It's magic.
It is indeed. And at the top of the show, I'm going to call out some specific individuals that I'm familiar with. I'm familiar with most of them, but there are one or two new names that reviewing and prepping for this show I kind of came
Mhm.
across. So, and again, this is not about dismissing the efforts of our ancestors who worked in the fields, because anyone who has a home garden, that growing stuff and rearing animals and all of that, not easy. Need skills for those. But for the kind of things that we're talking about that people may not be familiar with, Danya, this morning, we're chatting about James Hemings, who went to Paris with Thomas Jefferson and his sister Sally Hemings in 1784. And he went, and Thomas Jefferson specifically brought James so that James could learn how to do French culinary cooking. And James was actually one of the first Americans to learn how to do French culinary cooking. Again, cooking, skills, all of that sort of thing. And to be
That
taken
part.
to, and to be taken to another country to do it. Abdul Rahman Ibrahima Sori. Name may sound familiar to some people, but for those of you who aren't familiar with him, he was actually a Futa Julani prince who was brought to Natchez, Mississippi in 1788 after being captured in battle. He was an Islamic scholar. He was a mathematician, apparently a mathematical genius, and a
Hmm.
military strategist. Interestingly, he was freed by President John Quincy Adams in 1828 after international pressure led by the Sultan of Morocco. Amazing story. Then we have, I was telling you as well about Joseph Stalin. This is much later than slavery. But between 1929 and 1932, he specifically called Black Americans to come out to the Soviet Union in Uzbekistan, of all places, to cultivate cotton and to grow cotton. So the
Mm.
union wanted to get in on that cotton trade. No one really knows how many Black Americans went, but it's estimated that somewhere between 50 to 100 of them did. Cool story: Joseph Stalin Rome, a distant family relation on my father's Rome side of the family tree. He was born in Russia. His parents actually were part of that migration. They ended up coming back to Westmoreland County, Virginia.
Oh
Peter,
wow.
Peter Benson, Bentzon, born about 1783, died somewhere between 1850 and 1860. He was a Philadelphia silversmith. He did things like the most beautiful teapots, sugar bowls, and spoons and things of that nature. The beauty and the quality of these pieces, many of which still exist and are you can see them in museums, they were worthy of being in palaces. wouldn't be out of place in a place like Versailles or Buckingham Palace. These were beautiful pieces of work. We have Caesar, 18th century Bostonian, an enslaved silversmith who appeared in the 1770 estate inventory, listed as a silversmith. We have goldsmiths, weavers, just so many different types of crafts. Um, I was never taught about that. I didn't even know that our people were even being used to produce those kinds of goods. So
That's right.
we're talking about these people were engineers, they were designers, they were builders, they were architects of a nation that rarely, if ever, said their names.
That's right. And it's their fingerprints in all of this. They're everywhere. On the bricks of Charleston, the iron gates of Savannah, the pottery of Edgefield. We all know who Dave is. You know, the quilts folded in our grandma's cedar chests. Even going into thinking about when the American flag was done. Bessie Ross. Even
Yeah.
though she was what? You know, I mean, all of that. All of those different things, our family's fingerprints are in the stitchings of America. Everybody is in the stitching of America. So I don't want anybody to just think just because, you know, we are a black history type show. We acknowledge everything. And
Oh,
you know, all of that from that's why I brought Bessie Ross up because I want people to know that we acknowledge everything. Everybody's hands is in the building and they cannot stop that.
mhm.
So
So Donnie and I want to have a slightly different take on this show than maybe other shows of a similar topic, because we don't want to spend the next hour talking about what was taken.
that's right. We're talking about what was created.
Mhm. Because our ancestors, they were never just labor.
No, they were legacy people. Legacy, legacy. That's a song. Look it up, Jill Scott.
Yes, indeed. And it's time to remember not only their hands, but the creations that their hands brought to life. So,
Yes.
let's start in the colonial period. Enslaved men and women, they weren't just working in the fields, they were also working as very and highly skilled artisans.
That's right. They were craftsmen and craftswomen, people who built cities from the ground up, brick by brick, beam by beam. They didn't just do the labor, they created infrastructure in Charleston, Savannah, Baltimore, DC. Their handiwork is still standing. Well, part of it is in DC because some parts was chopped off, but we're not going to talk about that. Go ahead.
And bulldozed. This is also worth remembering, putting it at a really basic level. Their skills were so valuable that their enslavers hired them out to others. And by others, I mean to other enslavers, to city businesses, to shipyards and construction sites.
Exactly. You know, that's one of the things that happened to George Quarles.
Yes, yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Yes. So, and this meant that our folks were everywhere. They were their buildings, the building wealth they couldn't keep. You just couldn't hold that down. And yet, through it all, they passed those skills down to their children. Think about that: teaching carpentry, masonry, metalwork, tailoring, so that their legacy would outlive bondage. And not only that, so they know how to create some type of cash, some type of monetary income for themselves if they were to ever come out of bondage because they didn't know what was going to happen, you know?
Absolutely. And it may be a unique way of looking at it, but in my opinion, to me, their craftsmanship in and of itself became a form of very quiet resistance because their excellence couldn't be erased. You look at a pot or anything that they built, and you can see the quality, the care, and the pride and the attention that they put into it.
Exactly. Yeah, it goes right back to what my mom, my mom made this one thing, and I always bring it up when I get the opportunity. The bottom line is this: you have those who have gone to school for architecture, and they go to school and they learn how to draw that blueprint and they learn everything about that stuff. But then they handed that blueprint to an enslaved person that never ever went to school, could barely speak English, definitely couldn't write, and they built exactly what they asked for. There's a genius in that all in itself.
You know, the one of the perfect places in South Carolina to see what you just said, Middleton Place. When you look at the beauty and the complexity of that landscaped garden, all of those earthworks, even creating the rice fields,
Mm,
but the formal gardens, they built that. They may not have
wow.
drawn the plans. They may not have done they had to actually measure things out to actually reconstruct what they saw on paper.
That's that part.
That's an amazing thing.
It's a genius. It's genius. That's why I said underline it, bold it, italicize it. It's a genius. So we can't have this conversation without talking about women because you know.
I know where you're going with this.
So the seamstress, the cooks, the spinners, the weavers, they were artists, okay? Businesswomen, organizers. Some of them ran entire plantation operations. They trained apprentices, created fashion out of scraps.
Mhm. And if anyone doubts that businesswoman, uh, that part that Donia just said, even though they were enslaved, I'm thinking about Charlotte Peterson, Richardson, Minter Strother, the Edgefieldian lady, the enslaver who enslaved hundreds of people, married about 5 different men.
That part.
Well, her ride or die, basically her enslaved ride or die, her right hand person. I believe her name was Betty or Betsy or Bet. It was variation of
It
that
was. I
name.
think it was Bet. I think they called her Bet. But
Mhm.
tell that story, Brian.
But she ran that lady's. She ran Charlotte's household. She
That's right.
was she was she was the number two boss. I don't mean to make her sound like she is the female equivalent of Steven from Django. I don't get that vibe with Bet, but she, for an enslaved woman, I don't know how typical it was for that time period. She had a lot of, I'm not going to say power, authority.
Authority.
Yeah.
Authority is a better word. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and she did. And she said exactly, they stitched their hopes into fabric, hid escape routes into patterns, turned cloth into testimony. These women were our first designers and curators of Black creativity. They held knowledge, they passed it forward, and kept the culture alive when everything tried to strip it away.
Mhm. And Black entrepreneurship after slavery didn't happen in a vacuum and it wasn't some magical thing. After emancipation, those same skills that Don and I have been outlining in the top of this show, they built that was the foundation that built the first wave of Black entrepreneurship.
Exactly. Once freedom came, our people they didn't wait for opportunity; they built it. Barbershops, dressmaking businesses, carpentry shops, all run by people who've been honing their crafts long before emancipation pages were signed. Let's not forget schools, because they built them too. HBCUs came out of that. So, you know, it was a multitude of things.
Mhm. And again, a different way of thinking about well, actually, the Black barbershop today has echoes of the Black barbershops that free people of color did, and then freed men and women coming out of slavery did. They were always more than just a place to get a haircut.
That part.
These were the community's newsrooms, community centers where people needed help. That was a safe space where they could ask for it. Barbers knew everyone, and everyone trusted them. And
Yep.
they used their trade to support their people, and that's a legacy and a strategy right there that echoes down to this very day.
That's right. Barbershops were more than a place to get a haircut. They were newsrooms and community centers and safe spaces.
Mhm.
Um, oh, you just said that.
So again, we're talking about trades that became generational wealth before we even had that phrase. Um,
Right.
can I just put a little caveat on that one though?
Yeah.
Up until the failure of the Freedmen's Bank, that was always our Wall Street. That destroyed that first level of generational wealth that our people have. But that's another topic for another day.
It
But
is. And then but even though that's another topic for another day, we still got past it because we
mhm,
ended up building places like Tulsa. And it wasn't it wasn't no fault of ours. People just didn't like that we were able to do that. Again, rolling into this, genius. We were still geniuses, still into the entrepreneurship and how to build and make us move forward without relying on others to take care of us or to not to take care of us, to help us along, to give us, because they weren't going to give us anything. And we knew that.
I think
Nothing was going
I
to give.
think our ancestors were stone cold realistic about that.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
But you're touching on this whole creativity thing, and we're saying the creativity that was instilled then is still with us today. But and you see this in things like welders, woodworkers. I was stunned to even find out that there were enslaved colonial jewelry makers and people who could cast or what are they called, molds, to be able to make metals and jewelry out of. You were already saying about the blankets. Um, the whole range of textile artists. You know,
That part.
all the people active in these fields today are tapping into an energy that's always been here with our people.
Exactly. And what's not mentioned in here is music, because music was
Hmm.
one of the main ways that they did those types of things. Whether the artwork may have been in the quilt, but it was in the words of the song that told them which way to go. These things were happening in that manner. You hear people say my great great grandfather was a cooper, or my ancestor was a potter in Edgefield, and now they're carrying that same lineage forward. They're saying these skills run in my blood.
Okay. So, were you going to mention Dave the Potter, or was I going to mention Dave the Potter? I think you were going
You
to
know
mention.
what? It don't even matter. We got a lot of people that's just making their little comments. It's a wonderful thing that the family has now been, they've been recognized. His family has been recognized, I think, through Boston, correct? Museum,
Hmm.
Fine Arts, Boston. And people are very happy about it, but there are some stories that are out there about Miss Potter, about Mr. Drake, because his name is Dave Drake. And that's really crazy, like the typesetting that he did that. Yeah.
And
Oh,
Shelley, yes, you're absolutely correct. Those Angolans, the people who came from the Kingdom of Ndongo in 1619 and arrived in the James River region of Virginia, they had math skills. Their skills were so mad, it saved a literally dying colony.
that part.
That part.
That part. I mean, that's who we are. But yeah, as far as Dave is concerned, you know, it's amazing to me how just the stories that are made up is. I'm going to say it like this. I've done extensive research on the Drake family because I'm an Edgefieldian researcher. So there are things that I know about Dave and his research and his line and the things that they've done. There were other potters that a lot of people don't know about. He wasn't the only one. You
Yes,
know,
there was how many? Five or six others. There was
we
Brister.
saw, yeah, Brister and the one with the weird name. And I honestly believe Brister is probably related to me because that name is synonymous with the Yeldell family. But not to mention the fact he has a daughter named Hannah, who's the same exact age of the Hannah Yeldell in my tree, in my line. So it's wild. But yeah, I've done a lot of research on that, and it's an amazing thing, and how the pottery work even went about and how it even came about, and the stuff that they had to do, from the enslavers having to purchase land to how they went about, our families, our people were used in so many different ways, and it was just amazing to me how they made it through. But overall, yes, Dave was great.
I'm going to be a little harsher. I'm going to say our ancestors made money for other people in every conceivable way, many of which they have never been acknowledged for.
I mean, isn't that par for the course? We're not acknowledged,
Yeah,
correct?
well, exactly. That's just history. Um, But, and part of going back to what Danya was saying about, my great great grandfather was a cooper or my ancestor was a potter, and talking about how, modern designer makers, craft makers can say that, those skills and that kind of creative DNA runs in their blood. Well, collectively, we're just honoring those hidden hands that shaped these wonderful things and just made all of these wonderful contributions.
Exactly. I mean, there's so much different stuff that we can go into when it comes to this. When I think about George Quarles was enslaved by Hugh Middleton Quarles.
Mhm.
And it was through the research that I did for him that we started to see. Well, I was looking for Rebecca Bug, who is one of our people that we've been researching. And in the midst of trying to figure out how they got together, because Rebecca was a free person of color, George was an enslaved man. So trying to figure out how the two met, and it was through the records that Hugh Middleton Quarles had that allowed me to see that Hugh was renting him out to different people. And who was one of the folks that he was renting him out to? Edward Settles. Edward Settles was the guardian of Rebecca Bug. And because he was the guardian of Rebecca Bug, that's how she probably met him, because he was constantly coming to Edward Settles' home to do, I think he was a carpenter, if
Yes,
I'm not
I
mistaken.
believe he was.
He was a carpenter. Because one of the things about the Yeldales, they gave their enslaved people um, high profile positions. So, or high profile type skills and trades. So they actually did teach their enslaved people how to read and write, regardless of what some have said on other posts.
Hmm.
They actually did teach them how to read and write. They also prepared them for the possibility of slavery ending.
Yeah.
So most Yale enslaved people were carpenters, all
Mhm.
of the things that we just said, carpenters, blacksmiths, cooks, seamstresses. These were things that would allow them to make money after the fact.
So
And
I've
they
got
knew how to get that.
so I've got a quick question for you. It's always struck me that the enslaving Yeldos were kind of ostracized by many of the other Edgefield families, like maybe the higher profile ones, like the Hammonds and the Calhouns and the Brookses and whatnot. Do you think it's because of how they practice enslavement by teaching enslaved people how to read and write, by teaching enslaved people skills, tradable skills?
Hmm. That's a good question.
Because they don't seem
And
to have been
and I
embraced.
don't know how to answer it.
Because
That's a good question.
do you think that my perception of that is correct? That they weren't fully embraced by the larger, wealthier, more powerful enslaving families?
I think that because first off, we have to remember they were what's the name of the people? They came from Philly. They
Oh, no.
came from Pennsylvania.
Now you got me thinking. I know the Stidhams came from Pennsylvania.
I know, but what's the name? It begins with the W.
Oh, Williams?
No, no, not the
Oh,
person. The kind. What? Damn. Mm. The kind of people that they were, they didn't believe in slavery at first. What's the name? What was those?
oh, Quakers.
Quakers. It began with a
Quakers.
Q.
Yeah.
They were Quakers first. So because they were Quakers first, then I think that has a lot to do with what they did and how they responded to things. I think that the area as they moved to South Carolina and was around, thank you, Shelley. I think, as they came into the area of South Carolina, some of them got indoctrinated into the lifestyle, but some of them did not. Some of them, they still believed a certain thing these were just their workers, or these were not workers because workers are paid, but
Yeah.
these were the people that did the things that they needed done.
They're skilled labor force.
They were skilled, yeah. Thank you, but I couldn't think of a way to say that without thinking of money added to it.
I thought I would help a cousin out. I thought I would help a cousin out.
I couldn't think of the best words, but yeah, it's just that I think them being Quakers, that was the driving force for them to be able to
Mhm.
be a certain way. And I think that if some people were to actually look at their enslaver family members, they might find that a few of them were Quakers and went into, because for real, not all enslavers. Yes, the art of slavery was bad. The whole institution of slavery was bad,
Mhm.
but there weren't a lot that really participated in that really brutal slavery.
And again, there was that little cluster of families around the Yeldales who were exactly the same. The Harlings, they started off as Quakers. When they were
Yeah,
Harlins, I don't know why they changed the name when they got to Edgefield. The Mendenhalls started off as Quakers. The Baileys started off as Quakers. There's that whole little group of them. And
yeah.
and I remember telling you many times, the Harlings were never large scale enslavers, and they actually went out and worked those fields alongside their enslaved people.
So did the Yeldales.
That's right, they did.
So did the Yeldales,
And the
and
Yeldales buried them amongst
that's
them.
what I was getting ready to say. Yeah. So when people talk about, oh, they wanted to hold them, they wanted to, they wanted to even keep them in death. In death. That's why they buried them with them. Not the Yeldales. They literally cared for their enslaved folks. Yeah. Oh, Sharon said that that's how you guys are related through the Harlings.
Yeah, one of the ways.
Yeah, but Yeldales did that. They definitely they buried their enslaved right alongside them because they cared about them, not because not the other thing, not the other way around.
No,
You
that's
know,
true.
it wasn't
Sorry,
it wasn't like that.
and sorry, everyone. I'm having to make a slight adjustment here to my lighting, which seems to be possessed at the moment. But while I'm doing this, I just want to say that Sharon also raised a really good point about George Washington and some of his skilled enslaved people who were making whiskey. We
That
know
part.
that John the Wealthy Welshman, back when the Williams family of Edgefield were still in Hanover County and York County, Virginia, that's the reason why he got the name the Wealthy Welshman, making whiskey. He
Yep,
didn't, he may have come up with the formula. He wasn't the one cooking, he wasn't the one brewing it up.
that's right. He was not. And that's the thing. I think that's the argument. Not think, I know. That's the argument for a lot of people who want to join the DAR, for example, and more than likely SAR as well, because the enslaved folks are the ones that did the work. Y'all know that. That's not there's no question in that. They're not going to name them.
But that's
They're not
why
going to, you know.
But that's why I have a quibble about this argument about who built the country in the time periods that we're talking about. Did the enslavers come up with concepts and visions and the actual work to be done? Yes. But whose hands actually did it? Indentured
Not only
servants?
that, but let's be clear. We have to remember there were free people of color.
Oh, absolutely.
And those free people of color came up with ideas too.
Oh, hmm.
So they weren't alone. They weren't the only people. The enslavers were not the only people coming up with these ideas. The reason why I say that is because of some of the stuff that I used to post on my the Black History page that I have, and how I was finding stuff that was patented by Black people during the 1800s, during slavery time, and it was snatched from them because then they said they couldn't patent stuff, even though they were free people of color. So they took the patent and then turned around and did it themselves. One of the main people, a Black woman, I can't remember her name, but she created the roll top desk.
Oh, yeah, her.
I can't remember her name, but she
I can't.
created the roll top desk. They took that patent from this lady. and then redid it for themselves. So I'm sorry. I mean, we no, I'm not even going to give enslavers. Did they come up with the idea? Not by themselves, no, because some of the stuff could have been taken or stolen.
Mhm.
Some of the ideas could have been done. The only thing that I give them is the fact that they were able to go to school and that they were able to learn certain things and that they were able to do all of the things that they needed to do in order for them to move and get ahead. But then all they did was turn that stuff around and give it to somebody who was quote unquote uneducated, not able to do those things, and those people did it. That's what I do. That's what I look at.
Mhm. Well, before you go into explaining to people why it's more important to find out more about what your ancestor did if they're described as a laborer or a servant, I'm just going to say it was Africans having mad skills in the first place that made them a target to be trafficked in their millions. And by trafficked, I mean from Chad to the West Coast, coming to the Atlantic world, and from Chad to the East Coast, being taken by the Arabs into the Middle East. When you think about the collective intellectual capacity that was stripped from that continent over 600 years, it's mind-boggling.
I mean, isn't that what's happening today?
In what way?
It hasn't. I mean, think about it. Everything that we do, we live rent free in these people's heads.
Hmm.
Everything that we do, they go. That's the culture snatching.
Oh, you're talking about the cultural thing, like
Yes,
braids and dress and
everything,
language,
everything,
food, everything. Yes.
everything. These things are still happening today. Everything that you're talking about is still happening today. We
Mhm.
live rent. We live rent free there.
Yeah.
We don't. They don't have no problem with that.
But again, I would invite the audience to think about the artisans, the scientists, the health, the people who knew about health. I don't know if you would have called them doctors back then. But, people who knew how to cure illnesses, people who could invent things, mathematicians, all of that was stripped from Africa through millions, hundreds of millions of people, and shipped everywhere.
Yes, and then Shelley just said same people in charge. That's why it's still going the same way that that it's done.
Mhm.
It doesn't. We have to recognize the power of us. Our kids have to know the power of us.
Yes, and
What we
stop believing the colonizing propaganda that our ancestors were dumb, stupid brutes that were little more than animals. We were always more than that.
Yeah,
We
that
were
part.
never, actually not more than that. We were never that. Let's just say it that way. We were never
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, and our kids have to know. Brian, you opened me up to the little thing that happened. I tell y'all, I don't cut the TV on no more. But I'm telling y'all, the last time that I turned the TV on, I think was before the election, and I haven't cut it on since. But Brian was telling me today about an incident that happened here in DC at the Navy Yard, and our children, not just our children. It was all races or whatever. But of course, my concern, I ain't even gonna lie, I'm concerned about the black kids. Us as parents, we need to get them out the street for real. Like, it was really bad. At first everything was good, but then all of a sudden kids started fighting, stuff started happening, people were running through in the streets, kids ignoring what the officer was saying. These were all a group of teens, and now they have a curfew 11 o'clock. Everybody got to be in the house 16, 17 and under, got to be in the house by 11 o'clock because they got this curfew. Y'all know the times that we are living in. You know the things that are going on at this moment. If you don't know, ask somebody. If you're not understanding, ask somebody. Because at this point, we need to stand up for our kids. Because these children should not have been out there like that. Specifically black children, because that's what they want. Y'all are target practice. Don't ever forget that.
Mhm.
Don't ever forget that. Like, God.
So I'm going to segue into kind of a research take on this topic. And I'm going to say, as we are researching our ancestors, we see a lot of descriptions for them, specifically the enslaved ones, but in estate inventories, dated slave lists, all of those things. So don't just stop at the word laborer or servant. You know, we should be asking ourselves, what kind of servant? What kind of labor were they doing? What did that mean for them on a day-to-day basis? What do those actual hands do? Because that one little word, servant, laborer, it doesn't really tell the story. It's the craft that tells the story. And places, again, where you can look for this kind of information, if plantation ledgers still survive, more information can be found there. And if it's not in private family hands, hopefully it's been digitized and available in a library. Not always. I just found out yesterday at work that there's a wonderful family Bible that's actually in the Library of Virginia in Richmond, where not only the births, deaths, and cohabitations of enslaved people were written down, but there's information about what some of these people were doing, just kind of scribbled in the margin. Or you know how they do, if there's 3 different Susies or 5 different Toms listed in a state inventory, sometimes it may have words like driver or blacksmith are telling you exactly what they're doing. Also, local history books in places like Internet Archive, Hathi Trust, Google Books. These are old local history books that many times discusses not only enslavers, but some of the enslaved people that they held in bondage. And you can find out wonderful things about what some of these enslaved people were doing. Again, I keep sorry to keep harping on about kind of patriots, colonial era patriots, but George Washington's body servant, there's lots of information about what he did. And if you're a descendant of his, you can start filling in the gaps to really get a sense of what his craft was. That man was not freed is something else. Again, as other people have mentioned, we have to think about these plantations as self-contained towns. Thomas Jefferson had a shack where the men were making all the nails that were used on that plantation from the building of the interiors of Monticello down through for as long as that estate stayed in the Jefferson family.
And it's good that you mentioned that, because that's something that really has to be pointed out. Back then, enslaved people made every bit and piece of what was being built. So down to the nails,
Hmm.
then the wood, then the everything, the making the corners be so precise. Everything. They literally built, carved the marble. They did every little
Everything.
thing.
Again, I think about the first time I went to Monticello. We were in the dining room, and the tour guide was like, "This is beautiful dining room table with just beautiful chairs." The enslaved people built them. The women wove the fabric for the seat cushions that was stuffed by
Yeah.
other enslaved people. It's not like they ordered these things from a catalog.
Nope.
It's not like they were going into whatever the nearest large population center was to
That's
buy
right.
them.
It
They're
was no
enslaved
little Hobby
people.
Lobby sitting over in the corner that you can go and get your stuff in and everything. No,
No,
they
ma'am. No,
no.
ma'am. No home store. Is that what they
Everything,
call it?
everything down to the stuffing itself. The stuffing was created from the cotton that was picked by them. I mean, everything. Like, when you really kind of break all of this down, please stop saying that we did not do stuff. Like, better yet, stop calling my ancestors lazy.
That
That
part.
part. Don't call them lazy, because calling them lazy is absolutely ludicrous. That's the most diabolical thing you could ever say. It is diabolical to just come out of your mouth and actually call an enslaved person lazy when you really think about every little thing that they had to do when it came to creating stuff. That's crazy work.
Mhm. And if people want to feel a kind of way about it and they want to be mad about something, be mad about the system that blocked maybe your indentured ancestor or poor white ancestor who could have been an amazing carpenter, um, an amazing craftsman. The very act of slavery shut your ancestor out of that process. They
That
didn't
part.
have any need to pay someone to do something when they already had a highly skilled labor force making stuff for them for free.
Say that again, Brian, for the people in the back that don't hear it. Okay? Because that's the whole thing in this. They were poor. You had poor indentured people that didn't have no job
Mhm.
because they were getting it for free from somebody else.
Yep. Couldn't farm and get paid for it like they could back in the old country because of slavery.
That part.
They were actually locked out of the kind of labor force for the top, I'm going to say 10% of each of the colonies and then the states.
That part.
The best
That
they could
part.
hope for would be to be an overseer, to lord it
Yep.
over the very people being used to keep them poor. If you want to think about that one,
Yeah. And
not
then
only are you
Shirley,
denied an opportunity to hone your craft or even have a skilled craft as a poor white person, um, you were just locked out of that labor force. Full stop.
that part. And if you think about it, it makes you kind of understand why some enslavers took the need to have some of their enslaved people know how to read and write. They,
Mm.
they needed them to. They needed to know in order for them to do what they wanted done. They needed to know. And it actually kind of makes sense now. You know, it really does. It makes sense. And Shelley pointed out how the children made nails as well,
Hmm.
and just all of those different things. But and how we have one person who didn't even realize that the children did that. And that's the thing. Our families were from age 5 probably is when they were put to work. When the moment them babies.
Uh-oh. I hope we haven't lost you. Just in case, because Danya has frozen, um, child labor was very
Am I
common.
still there?
Oh, you're back.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just building on your point. I
What
was
did you
saying not
say?
only was child labor common, you could literally be worked to the day you dropped. The more I read about Butler Island in Georgia, Major Pierce Butler's plantation, down to his grandson, Pierce Meese Butler, actually reading journal accounts of how, and they're described as old crones, these women, having to look after the geese and the chicken, but they didn't do it on their own. They did it with little kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, helping these really old women look after flocks of geese, ducks, and chickens. Oh, okay. I guess it really is me flying solo. Hopefully, we're going to get Tanya back soon. Um, so, kind of to cut to the chase, what Tanya and I really hope you guys are getting a sense of is that those hidden hands, they built and shaped towns and cities and plantations and small farms. They shaped cultures and they created beauty that still surrounds us to this day.
Yes, they do. Our ancestors weren't just laborers; they were visionaries, and we're the living proof of what their brilliance made possible.
Absolutely. Did you have because you literally went as you were making a point about the children workers, the child workers. Man, the universe doesn't want you to say what you want to say. Every time you start to say this, it freezes. Don, you may have to leave this as a comment. I don't know what's going on. But hopefully, as well, we can give you guys, we've provided you guys with some ways to actually do that deeper research into our ancestors. Because one of the things that I love about working with Donia and my other cousins and the researchers, whether we're researching our own ancestors or other people's ancestors, these are always more than just names to us. You can't spend time researching either a family member or someone else's family members, going through that painstaking work, crafting their life story, following their pathways through enslavement, coming out the other side into freedom, without some kind of an emotional connection to them. Always digging beneath the surface to really turn them into 360-degree human beings that we can recognize as people who lived, breathed, loved, and ultimately died.
Yeah, I ain't even gonna mention the kids no more because every time I mention the kids, it shut it down.
Yeah, I'm going to say you may need to leave that as comment. We're 0 for 3. I know what you want to say. Clearly, whatever's happening, yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to thank Angie for going and researching it. The lady's name was Sarah E. Good. And I'm going to
Mm,
read her thing. Sarah E. Good, a formerly enslaved African American woman, invented a cabinet bed in 1885 that folded into a roll top desk, an innovation often confused with the roll top desk itself. She was one of the first Black women in the United States to receive a patent.
mhm,
And then Abner Cutler, Buffalo, New York, took the patent in 1850.
mhm.
You see what
And,
I'm
re-
saying?
and remember, years ago, I shared a photo I literally stumbled across. It was the Richmond, Virginia train station. There were all of these freed women. They were described as freed women, and they had these enormous baskets, and they were filled with fried chicken, and that's how they were making their money. They were
Mm.
selling their fried chicken, not to other Black people, to the white passengers as they were going on to those trains.
Oh,
So, as you were saying, our people, we've always been described as lazy. We've never been lazy.
never.
Um, if any, we
We
always
were
find a way out of
resourceful.
we find a way out of no way.
Yes, we were resourceful. My according to my mom, my grandfather was down for a year. He couldn't work. He couldn't do anything, and my grandmother had to pick up and take care of things. So y'all gotta understand, my grandparents were founders of Springfield Baptist Church, and in Washington D.C. And so, because they were founders of this church, they were also like, even though there were other people who were a part of the founding, they were the backbone of the church. So, when my grandfather took ill for a year and my grandmother had to take over, she wasn't just taking over the household, she was taking over the church as well. What were other things that she had to do? What were some of the things she had to do? Make sandwiches, go down to 8th Street, and Brian, you know what I'm talking about. This was when,
Mhm.
and even though the rail cars are back, but these were the old day rail cars, and they would literally sell sandwiches to the construction workers, to the people, her and my older aunts. They would go and they would sell these sandwiches, and this was how they continued to keep the house running, to keep food, to keep money, to keep clothes for the kids. My mom is the youngest of 14, one of which who died, so 13 children. These things were happening. Never, we're just a resourceful group of people
Mhm.
who
And
know
thank you,
how to
Shelley.
make it work.
Absolutely. And thank you, Shelley. She said the photograph that I just mentioned about the chicken ladies. She's like, that's actually at Gordonsville at the Civil War Hotel and Museum. Thank you, Shelley. I had no idea that those ladies are actually celebrated every single year.
Wow, that's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you for that.
Wow.
But
And Linda, you know what? Linda Johnson just made a comment, and it's deep. This is a deep comment. She
mhm,
said we became lazy when we were no longer working for free.
absolutely.
That's
It's
deep.
always been propaganda.
That's deep. Cause now we lazy.
Yeah.
We making that money. Now we all right.
But if I can be my mean Edgefieldian self for just a minute, we
Do it.
can't be that lazy because he's still trying to. They fantasize about getting us back out there in them fields.
Man, he already got his slave labor going. You know those people gotta go to work every day and they not getting paid. Ain't that labor?
Yeah, that's true.
That was literally the
You know,
first thing that came to my mind.
for a bunch of people who seem to be lazy, we certainly live rent free in their heads.
All the time.
Do you do that with a lazy? Do you bother yourself about a lazy person? I
I
don't.
look, I don't I no. I'm just gonna say no. Just say no. Just go say no. But yeah, yeah. Oh, Tanya, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that.
So am I.
I am very sorry to hear that you've been furloughed, and it's just crazy though, and that's what he's doing. And I'm gonna tell you, Tanya, and you can tell your friends that I said it. Walk out. He don't listen to nothing. Why should y'all? I know y'all got the little NDAs that y'all need to sign and everything, but the whole group need to. At this point, if they don't have nobody to boss around, walk out. That's my thought process. I said that to another person one time.
Because I'm also going to say, I did a little stint as an adult living in the hood, living at Blue Hill Avenue in Boston, Massachusetts. You want to know what everyone did in the hood? They hustled.
That
People
part.
out there working 2, 3 jobs to put food on the table, pay their mortgage and/or their rent.
They did. And this is not to say that people don't. Like it's a whole issue now since we're going into this a little bit because we are running out of time. But it's a whole issue now with the my nose is itching. With the with the air traffic controllers having to work 2 jobs in order to move forward.
Mm.
It's fun, it's wild that they're talking about the air traffic controllers having to do that, but they're not the only ones that have to do that. So why are you focused on them? I don't understand the focus being directly on them. And I think one of the reasons is because they're like, okay, if air traffic controllers can't make no money, they're gonna shut everything down because that's what I heard before. And there no planes, no flights, no nothing. Y'all need to open up. So I don't know, whatever it takes to get this done, to get this shut down over with, they need to get it over with. They
I'm going
just
to
need
say
to get
not
it over.
whatever, so long as the healthcare thing's not sacrificed.
And I
That is the
understand,
holdout. That's the
and
holdout.
that's the holdout, the healthcare, and people don't understand that they're trying to make sure that you have health care.
Mhm.
That's it. That's the whole issue. Because the whole time they're constantly blaming Democrats, and even though I don't even believe in the Democrat Republican thing, but they're constantly blaming Democrats for this whole situation when Republicans have not come back into work. They haven't come back. They're not back yet. They're not even here. They've been gone on vacation for over 6 weeks. Meanwhile, the Democrats are sitting there waiting for them to come back. I need y'all to make that make sense. But we're going deeper into something that,
Yeah, we are way off topic. So, in the closing minutes, I thought I would outline what we hope is going to be next week's show. I'm putting a caveat because we still haven't had 100% confirmation from the panelist and guest that we would like to join us. But if that comes through, next week's show is going to be along the lines of Black and Native alliances and intersections, where
yeah,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, we're diving into the powerful connections between African Americans and Native nations from Seminoles in Florida to Afro Indigenous communities in Oklahoma, Louisiana, and North Carolina.
Because it is one of the things I would like to see happen in 2026 is better relations
That part.
between our two groups of people.
Yeah.
Because we both of us have been on this rodeo for at least, I know the transatlantic thing went for 600 years, but in terms of this country's history, we've been on this rodeo for 400 years. So even though we've had different experiences within it, um, there's enough commonality that we can appreciate each other's histories.
Yeah. And like Brian said, we just might have a special guest joining us for that conversation. So you don't want to miss this show. Catch us on E360 TV, YouTube, Facebook Live. And don't forget to like, share, and invite your family, invite your peoples.
Because, at the end of the day, we are a family, even though we may get into some very heavy topics. Um, Apart from one little incident last week, we are a family-friendly show. We strive
What
to be.
happened what we do last week? I was sick last week, so
I think a little S bomb got slipped.
oh yeah, I did curse. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, he won't let me be great, y'all. I want to be like Reese Colbert. I want to be her. I want to be great like Reese. No, let me stop.
So as always, thank you so much for having spent this hour with us. We appreciate all of you. I will try to it'll probably be more tomorrow or Tuesday. I will come back and I will put in all the names that we've outlined and all the good things. But please enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, stay curious, stay proud, and keep exploring your genealogy adventures, guys. I'm Danya.
Absolutely. I'm Brian, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, yes. Bye.